here with Caleb from Casa Kalina, which is a men's treatment program outside of Dallas. It's start 18 to 35, somewhere around there. I've brought a couple of guys to Casa Kalina, and I've been really happy with the work they're doing and just the level of attention my clients are getting there, and it's just a fantastic environment. And so I really recommend it. So I'm going to introduce Caleb. Why don't you tell us, actually, let's talk about Casa Kalina later. Let's talk about you. You have a fascinating story that's been well documented. Can you give me like a couple of minutes snapshot of that?
Sure. I think the long and short of it is I was born overseas, born in Hong Kong, and I grew up in China, and had some really cool experiences over there. And for me, I would say some of my core inadequacies began with never feeling connected in some ways, always being the white kid over there, always being the Chinese kid back in the U.S. And kind of figured out, okay, I got to take care of my own feelings. And you couple that with a society that didn't have an issue with a 12-year-old buying booze. And so that kind of continued on for about the next 12, 13 years before getting sober. I came back to the U.S. when I was 17.
When you were in Asia, did you go to an American school or did you go to a Chinese school? Because I know you speak Chinese fluently.
Yeah, so I've been to every kind of school you could probably list, from, Chinese school to American public school to private school to international school to internet school to home tutoring. You name it, I've done it.
Yeah. So you came back to the States when you were 17.
Yeah, so I came back when I was 17, and a little bit of that reverse culture shock, not really quite knowing where I fit in, but I quickly found out that the same solution worked. Right, if I got drunk, I didn't really care where I fit in because I just felt like I did fit in at that point. Didn't have much of a sense of the future at all. I just wanted to feel good in the moment, and so dropped out of college. I started selling drugs, and immediately kind of figured out that I could get a lot of a sense of security. Through the drug game, because I knew I could take care of myself that way. And so, that got really rampant. It got pretty crazy. Started running around the U.S. Got married when I was 19, and she met me 1 month that I tried to get. Yeah, so I was sober for 1 month because of just some crazy circumstances. I woke up in a detox after I got introduced to Xanax. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to be sober. So for 1 month I was sober, and that's when she met me. So she liked that guy. And then she just kind of bought the ticket for a pretty crazy ride at that point. So for the next 5 years or so, it was just insanity. The stuff out of movies, just like some of the crazy situations and stuff, and with that insanity, she had enough of me, and I thought I'd had enough of both me and her. So we split, and I made a plan to commit suicide because I picked a date about a year out that I was like, that's the day, because my big thing was I never could be okay, and it didn't matter, the amount of drugs I did, the places that I would go, the money that I would spend. Nothing filled the void in my life to where I felt like I was okay.
Yeah.
And having lived around the world, had those experiences, I was like, well, there's nothing in this world that's going to do it. So, I'm going to take matters into my own hands. And so that year after we split, I partied harder than I had before. I climbed the drug chain higher than I had been before. And I was just doing some pretty crazy stuff all around the U.S. And I got busted 3 times in a row, 1, 2, 3 in April. And each time I got out of jail angrier and angrier. And I'd actually picked June 3rd, 2012 to commit suicide because I was going to wait till after my sister's wedding So that way,
Wow.
I wouldn't disturb the wedding. That's how selfless we addicts are, right? Like,
Yeah,
I'll wait
yeah,
till after the wedding,
right.
to
Then it'll
permanently
be okay.
family, yeah, then it'll be good. And at the wedding, a few different people came up and talked to me out of nowhere that I hadn't seen in a long time, that were not connected with each other. They were completely different socioeconomic status. I mean, just as different of a group of people as you could imagine. And all of them had one thing to say to me, though. Hey, God put it on my heart that I needed to talk to you. And that really weirded me out. I was like, okay, well, thanks for all that. And I left. And, it was about 3 days before I was going to kill myself. And I was sitting on the back porch with my dad. And I just demanded to know how my dad made have peace in his life. And me and him didn't talk about any of that. I was drunk, and I knew it was the last time I was going to see him. So I guess, in the sense of sappiness, I was like, Dad, let's have a conversation. And he talked to me about how he had given up fighting, trying to have control in his life, and that he had a relationship with God that has changed his life. And he walked off the porch, and, he said one thing that really stuck with me was that, I'm just a blind beggar, okay? And I found the soup line, the bread line, and I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm just trying to tell everyone else where the food is,
Mm-hmm.
And so I love you. Talk to you later. And he just walked off the porch. And
That's
so,
a great analogy. Had your parents been trying to get you sober up until that point? Had they made an intervention, treatment, stuff like that?
So one of the great mercies in my life was that when I decided I was going to do things my way, my parents did not try to jump in and save me a bunch of different times. They allowed things to get as bad as they needed to get. And for me, that was one of the great mercies in my life, that I was able to experience the consequences of being a self-will run riot, of doing what I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it, I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And they didn't try to convince me of much at all, like you need to go to rehab or anything like that. They just waited, because I think they knew that I'm so strong-willed that unless it came from within, and my dad shared this with me, unless it came from within, they're just going to be pissing money away. And it would be useless. But they also had a strong conviction of knowing that they weren't in control. Mm-hmm. And so they were okay with not being in control. They kind of relinquished that sense of, we're going to rescue him, we're going to make it happen.
Which is highly unusual for parents to take that position. That's not the norm. The norm is control.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Totally. And so when my dad said that and walked off the porch, again, he wasn't trying to convince me I needed help. He just said he loved me, and he had some good news on where to find peace. He walked away. Wow. See, I knew it was the last time I was going to see him, because I was planning on taking my own life in 3 years. So I'm standing there holding a beverage, an alcoholic beverage, and I look up at the night sky, and something happened all at once. 3 things. I realized that I was going to die with a bottle in my hands, and there was nothing that I could do of my own that would stop that. I had no more tricks. There was nothing going to stop that. And that 2, that the solution for me to not drink had to come from outside of me, because I had no more solutions. And then 3, that I was willing for that to happen, that I was just done. And because of the busts, for the drug stuff and all that, like, it would be easy to think, the consequences were finally weighing upon him. It wasn't that. I was going to take myself out. It was this true and utter dejected brokenness that can only be brought about through experiencing hopelessness, through trying to do things my way, that got me to this point of going, I don't care if I'm in a jail cell for the rest of my life. I no longer choose to live to do only what I want to do from here on out. Right. And a great sense of peace washed over me in that moment. And some pretty crazy circumstances happened to where I ended up in Dallas, and it's a pretty wild story I could go on about, but there are details in there that are just mind-blowing. But I ended up in Dallas, and I ended up walking out of a detox. and going into a sober living Gaston house run by a guy named Chico West. And I got out of detox on June 3rd of 2012, which is the day that I picked to end my own life a year ago. So in some ways, I think it's a sense of humor,
Yeah, sure.
And, that sense of community that I experienced at Gaston House of, having accountability and a strong program of recovery, it stuck with me there. And I've been sober since. I actually, after a year after getting sober, I came back as a house manager and I worked every position, got my licensure, and I actually ended up running the place for years. And so it's like, I was just at a wedding actually this week, and I was the best man in a wedding from one of the guys that got introduced through Gaston. I'm actually officiating another wedding later this month.
Oh, wow.
The Gaston.
Yeah.
This brotherhood that we went through together, right? And there's just a core group of us a bunch of us that are sober and still clicking. It's pretty cool.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is a fantastic story. And I'm so glad that you made it to the other end.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of us get to the point of contemplating, there's just, what's the point? For me, that was it. It was like, what's the point? Why go on? And I've told this story a couple of times, but in my one of my home group meetings, there was a woman who told this joke, and she said, what's the difference between an alcoholic and a regular person? And it's a regular person goes to start their car in the morning and it won't start. They call roadside assistance. An alcoholic goes to start their car in the morning. It doesn't start. They go and call suicide prevention. And I thought that was the funniest thing I'd ever heard. But the reason I thought it was so funny is because it exactly depicted my reaction to everything that was wrong in my life was just, fuck it, I'll kill myself. That was my plan B, and thank God for recovery, because, was I there the day I got sober? Was I, who knows? I don't know. But hearing your story is real testament to the gifts we get in this program and why to stay sober. So, yeah. What would you say to a young guy that, 25-year-old guy who, drug dependent, he's, but he's too afraid, he's really afraid, it's fear, right? I mean, the only reason that people don't go to treatment, they don't accept treatment, is that fear, right? And in an intervention, we do everything we can to ease that fear and get them past that, because we know that once you get inside that once you see that treatment center, once you get in the door, you're gonna say, "Oh, this is a nice place. It's not, this is not prison. I'm not being punished." So, something you must deal with a lot at Casa Colina is, that very, very first step.
Sure. And just to take it back to kind of some of our core beliefs is that, hey, we're, in a lot of ways, all of us are walking wounded in some ways, right? And we have these hurts and these pains and these things that we cover up. And just for alcoholics and addicts, we use drugs and alcohol to do it. But I think what broke down walls for me was that, saying something to a young guy like that is like, man, I see you, I hear you, and I understand. And not only that, I don't judge you, but man, I actually care for you and love you. It's like, those are the types of things that run contrary to how the world operates.
Right.
And those are the things that I believe bring about connection. Because if that guy's anything like me, I'm so filled with shame,
right,
about who I think I am and the things that I've done and stuff. Like, there's no way that I'm going to think that I can be connected with, that I have value, that I'm worth listening to. And to really set the drugs aside, it's like, and I just want to connect with people like that and let them know that they have value, that they are worthy, that they are worth connecting with. Yeah. And I think that in itself that's the invitation into recovery, right?
Right.
That's the
Right.
invitation into connectedness. That's
Right.
the invitation into community, is when I can start to experience that enough to where my naturally constructed walls of self-defense start to drop down just a little bit, so that people can reach out and connect with me on those hurt areas in my life, those
Yeah.
wounds, those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's, and that's something I give a lot of thought to is, and I posted a meme yesterday about, the difference between guilt and shame could be life and death, and for people who don't know, guilt is feeling badly about your behavior, and shame is feeling badly about who you are. I'm a bad person. And that's where I was when I came in, when I was deposited into treatment. I was had they sat me down at my treatment center and said to me, your diagnosis is simply you're just a shitty person, I would have said, yeah, I've suspected that my whole life. And I was just so sick with shame about who I was, and that messaging that that I started getting, when I was a very young kid, and that I just grew up, that faulty foundation that I just kept building on, and it had gotten to, you wind up in treatment, you wind up, going through all the things we went through, and that is when everything is just crumbled to the ground. But yeah, I mean, it's such a long process to get past all of that, to work with that and get past that. So
For sure, and it can still crop up, right? But at least now there's ways.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at least now we have this awareness of what it is, and have some tools, and that's the big difference. I mean, between you and I and somebody who hasn't been to treatment yet, is we've
Sure.
just, like your dad said, and I think that's a fantastic analogy. I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm just want to tell you that there's a bread line, and here it is. And it's the same thing, right? Is we've just been given a spot on the bread line.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's where it's just like that power of attraction is incredible. And then once you experience it for what it really is, you become insatiable. Like, you want to have that connectedness.
Yeah.
And it's just a big part of, I think, why I love what we do is that, yes, drugs and alcohol for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But we believe that they're but a symptom of a deeper problem. And if you're not tapping into that deeper problem and connecting on that deeper problem and bringing about healing with those deeper problems, you can put a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound, and you might be able to walk out of the clinic that way, right?
Right.
But a big part of why I think we, CASA does what it does is, like, when I was running Gaston House, I get guys from all over the country as a sober living that had already been to treatment.
Yeah.
And it was very telling, the level of work that being done in treatment centers based on the kind of guys that I would get at Gaston House.
Yeah.
And I think what we do a really good job of at Casa Colina is we help guys uncover trauma in such a way, their core wounds, kind of those things that are driving all that stuff, that behavioral external stuff that is easy to focus on. But we're good at kind of uncovering the underlying causes and conditions in such a way that guys do get healing, but then also they're aware of it down the road, so that when it gets stirred up again, they don't revert back to the only way of soothing themselves that they know, which is to drink and use, because they're at least aware of it now. And I just think that's a big part of how we operate, is getting down to that stuff.
Yeah. And you guys are a longer term program. I mean, you're a 90-day minimum program, which I think is so necessary. When I went to treatment, the model was still the 28 days. And I was a one-ship wonder, how I don't know, miracle. I really think that, you too. And I really think that God looked down at me and said, this guy needs a little extra help. I'm going to give him a little push because he ain't never going to get it on his own. Right. But it's interesting when you talk about that safety and coming in, what did it for me? What made me feel like I'm in the right place? It was a silly little thing, is looking around the room when I was sharing at a meeting, which is something I took to right away. Obviously, I'm a good sharer. Is seeing people go like this, is seeing people identify in. And it was like the first time in my life people were saying, yeah, I mean, I understand. Me too. I totally get where you're at. And they're now telling me I'm an asshole, and they're not telling me here's what you got to do. And they just knew how I felt. And seeing that, like, made me feel like I'd been looking for this my whole life. All I've wanted to do is feel like I deserve a seat in the room, and I never felt that way my whole life.
Yeah. You felt heard.
Yeah. And I thought I could be of value to other people, and I never felt that way either. So that's a big thing. I mean, I think that's how you and I wind up in these professions, is that one, I mean, it's one of the major tenets of the recovery program is that we stay sober by helping other people. So like I talk to people all the time, and I'm thinking, well, I don't know if they're not going to drink today, but I feel like I'm not going to drink today,
Yeah, totally. My sponsor, I love him. He's like, hey man, there's a difference between ability and availability, and we're called to have availability. So suit up and show up, chop wood and carry water.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's funny because I know for myself, like I could always handle major events very well, big tragedies, but it's the day-to-day stuff, the going to work, the paying the bills, the paying the taxes, all that stuff, this minutia that make a sober life, right? We're just, it's so hard for us sometimes.
Oh yeah, it's the ants that ruin the picnic, not the elephants, right?
Right. No, absolutely. So, and I just want to, I want to give a further plug for Casa Colina. I kind of found you guys accidentally. I was in Dallas, I guess a couple of years ago. I had a little time to kill, and I was looking at different treatment centers, and I drove out there, and I wound up taking a tour through the place with one of your guys who's still there. His name escapes me at the moment. I think he's like your operations guy. And I said, wow, this is a really nice place. This is a beautiful facility. It's a, beautiful ranch. And then when I had a client that had a certain insurance, and I saw it on the list, and I said, bam, there it is. I said, this is great. I'm going to take him there. And you guys did such a fantastic job. And not that I necessarily could see the quality of work in that person, but I could see it in his family, because I'm once I bring someone to you, you're kind of handling that end of it, and I'm still working with the family, and the mother who about a week into it, I had been working with her for many months, and I had never heard her. She sounded like she was sleeping at night and probably eating regularly. And then again, more recently, bringing someone to you, I just had all the confidence in the world. This person is going to be taken care of. And also, I mean, he was right in your wheelhouse of age, and this is, and again, I'm not in touch with him right now, but I am in touch with his mom and dad, and his mom sounds so much better.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. And then, you and I conferred on it too. And it's, I just love the fact that we got connected how we did. I remember how that happened is, I was actually out of town. I was in North Carolina, and you called, and I happened to have Sean there to give you the tour, but I've loved being able to work with just how you're so on point, and you cross the T's, dot the I's, and I've told people many times, I'm like, what I like about Mark? That guy like hand delivers.
Yeah, I got to make sure they get there. Yeah,
exactly. So it's great. We love working with you. One thing I will say though, from the 18 to 35, I think right now we just graduated a 65-year-old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we've had quite a few 40 and 50-year-olds as well. So because we're small enough of a program where that doesn't, we're so small, we're only 22 beds when we max out. We're so small that it's so close knit that the age barriers tend to not be an issue, and we have such a high staff to client that it's actually worked out really well having a mixed milieu like that. And we like the fact that we get some of those older guys too, because there's a whole shift in the dynamic when you have an older guy who's been doing what he's doing for 50 years. And you can just hear the pain and the hurt and the regret. And as he's talking to some of these younger guys who, yes, have consequences, but maybe not the consequential longevity that he's
not the kind of consequences that can't be undone with a little bit of sobriety.
Sure, exactly.
Yeah. So, but for anyone watching this, I think that your wheelhouse is a younger group. And I think that's what parents like about it. The 50-year-old, 6-year, I think those are more outliers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say our average age probably closer to 30, 35 would be our would average between everything, between the young guys and the older guys. But
yeah, that's about right. Yeah. So, well, good. No, and I'm glad. And, so no, thank you for taking time to do this with me. It's really fun. I love connecting, and that's one of the things I love about this, being in the recovery space is that we get to do things like this. I get to come out to Casa Colina or to another treatment center and spend a couple of hours with people and connect on a level that I never would have connected with someone in the corporate world. I mean, you just don't do that, and this is, and we're working, right? I mean, it's, and that's that's really the beautiful thing about it. Yeah. So very fortunate. So
yeah, totally.
What's the website for? Go ahead.
Oh, the website for Casa Colina?
Please, yeah.
It's www.casacolinatreatment.com. And then another resource that you've used before is the documentary that Chico Western helped co-produce. I
actually have that on my website. I have a link to it on my website.
So
and in the pre-intervention, I send the family stuff leading up to the pre-intervention. And one of the things I send them is that documentary because it's a good way, it's fodder for discussion. It brings up questions, and I like to discuss it with them. And they always have interesting things to say. And as I said, I do a pretty intense family meeting. I do a full day family meeting. So we really have time to cover these things. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, no, and that's exactly it right there, because when the film was made, it was meant to be given away for people like you. It's used in other treatment centers. It's been distributed around the globe. And so and I love it because it's a look at the duality of co-addiction, right, or codependency, if you will, and addiction. And it's a well-done film. It's short, hour and 17 minutes long, and the premise is to ask, right, like ask for help. So it's askmary.com, and you can see it there. You can see it on our website, and then on your website. Yeah.
No, it's a phenomenal resource, and I have been using it. And so anyway, I'm gonna wrap. These things I would gladly sit and talk another half an hour, but this is the first time I've done this on the iPhone. And I've been getting alerts like CNN and Wall Street Journal and Apple. And so I don't know, or, and Fox, and I don't know if those are going to come up on the screen, but whatever, just more real life stuff. So, well, thank you very much for doing this with me. I really enjoy it. And, I definitely look forward to bringing more people to Casa Colina. So.
I will, Mark. Thank you so much. Love what you're doing, and really appreciate the time. And hey, for real, maybe end of this month or at some point, I'm going to try to come down and see you too.
Please do, and I'll be happy to take you around, introduce you to some folks. Be a lot of fun.
Love it.
Yeah. So, all right, man. Thanks for everything.
All right, we'll see you later.
Peace out. Take care.
Later.